I don't understand the math of the NHL playoffs because the Rangers, President's Trophy, plus first round sweep somehow equals them being underdogs in their second round matchup against the Carolina Hurricanes. So let's talk all things Blueshirts with New York Post columnist Mark Cannizzaro. Mark, the math ain't mathin' for some reason, but before we get into all the odds, you were at practice today. Is there any new news or updates you can give us out of Terrytown?
You know, the Rangers don't leak that much news out, as we know. The only thing that's really something to keep an eye on, in terms of what may transpire in the next four or so days before the Rangers and Carolina play is what Peter Laviolette decides to do with Philip Hedl, who's been out since November with an injury. He's been practicing. He was rotating even in today with the first line a little bit. But that's a very fascinating argument whether to mess with something that's been working for a number of months, which was obviously the Rangers winning the President's Trophy and winning that first round of playoffs, and then adding Hedl to the mix, which would mean taking somebody else out and shaking up some lines that have been working very well. So Laviolette today, as expected, say he's not going to talk anything about his lineups or particular players in terms of where they're going to play, which is consistent with what he was, the way he was last week. So so that'll be a storyline as we move toward Game 1. This series is rife with storylines, starting with Laviolette himself, who's, coached the Panthers for 3 years and led him to a cup, and we were laughing with him a little bit about a week and a half ago before the Washington series started, because he had just coached Washington for, 3 years prior. And he said, listen, he goes, if this is going to be a theme, and we keep winning, that's going to be a theme for almost every series we play, because I pretty much coached everywhere, right? So today, when it was mentioned to him about Carolina, I mean, he was in Carolina, he's quite a few years removed from Carolina, I should say. So he said, "What's the statute of limitations on those questions about coaching the team?" So, but what's cool about this as well is Rob Brind'Amour, who's the Hurricanes coach, was his captain when Laviolette was the coach at Carolina. So that makes for a fascinating matchup and subplot storyline to this week, or this couple of weeks, I should say. But as expected, Laviolette kind of downplayed that. He was very, very complimentary of Brind'Amour as a player and how hard he worked and how he's translated that over, to his coaching. But getting back to your numbers, I'll give you the transition. It is a little curious why the Rangers would be underdogs. They are President's Trophy winners, but they only won by 3 points, more than Carolina had. And Carolina's also been the better team the last few years. They won 100-plus points in the last 3 seasons under Brind'Amour. So maybe it's more a body of work and a playoff experience thing. I don't really know. Obviously, the Rangers got bounced last year, by the Devils in the first round. And I'm not so sure they're getting a lot of respect out of the Washington series, since Washington was, a team that really just eked into the playoffs on the last day, given up 37 more goals than it had scored this season. So to a little bit of a degree, maybe people didn't think that Washington was a playoff-worthy team, if you will. So I'm thinking that's probably where it is. I was joking with our guy, Jay Blezo at the Post, who wrote a story about the odds. He does a lot of our betting stuff, and he also, full disclosure, happens to be a massive Rangers fan. So I know he's a bit up in arms about the fact that the Rangers are underdogs. But I did actually, I was around a group of reporters that were with Jacob Trouba today after practice, the Rangers captain. And he actually didn't even know that the Rangers were underdogs. So he said, well, if that being the case, he goes, we don't really care that much. Doesn't matter.
Well, you throw in the fact that they won 2 out of 3 against the Canes this regular season, and then the fact that they have home ice advantage. This is weird on this one. Vegas must know something we don't know. These two teams met in the playoffs in 2020 and in 2022. The players are saying their previous playoff experience against the Canes is a non-factor, but what's different about this Rangers team this year and this matchup this time around?
Well, it's weird. The first one of those was a COVID year. I think that was not kind of looked upon as a normal playoff, if you will, right? I mean, that was the bubble year and all that. The biggest really difference and one of the most massive storylines to this series, which, our crew at the Post, Molly Walker and Larry Brooks, and myself will be writing about this week is Vincent Trocheck. Was with Carolina, and he had some really really good years. He's his second year with the Rangers. So when they played that 22-23 playoff series, he was with Carolina, and he's coming off his best season. I think as a pro, he's arguably the Rangers' most valuable player. Laviolette has been. I mean, he had some really really powerful things to say about Vincent last week, talking about he touches every part of our game, and every from penalty kill to power play to 5-on-5 to everything. And so this guy is an absolute rock for the Rangers. Played all 82 games regular season for a third time he's done that in his career. So he's really the biggest difference. But obviously you got Wenberg and you got Roslovic, who Rangers brought in at midseason on this team this year. So that makes a bit of a difference as well. And you got some of the younger Rangers, who weren't around, back then, like, the VCs and whatnot. But I think really Trocheck is the biggest difference, the biggest kind of linchpin swing there.
Well, we can't wait for Game 1 at the Garden, whenever that is. Seems like it's going to take forever for that Game 1. But Mark, thanks for hopping on with us.
Anytime, Brandon. Thanks for having me on.